Hello, and I am Tomeria Jordan, the host of the Confidence Restorer podcast, and today is Testimony Tuesday. So, have you ever felt exhausted right before reaching your goal? In this episode, I really want to share a personal testimony regarding a recent family trip to the mountains. We went to Shenandoah Valley and we did the Stony Man trail. And a part of that, I started to feel really winded. And the closer I got to the top, the harder the climb was. But I realized that if I kept going, I would reach my goal. And there were a few times that I stopped, but it reminded me of an important life lesson, which is don't quit at the finish line. And so there were moments on this trail. It was only a 1.6 mile loop with a 340 feet elevation gain. But when I think about how I felt tired. I felt a little bit exhausted. Like, okay, you know what? Am I going to be able to make it on this journey? But when the thought came to mind, don't quit at the finish line, I said, oh my gosh, that is powerful. I have to share that. And if you've been following me for a while, then you know that the Confidence Restorer podcast has been active essentially since March 2025. And I have not been live in a while. And that was because I was working on some personal things and just figuring out, what is my next step. But tonight I just felt led to share this. And so I'm happy to be recording live, similar to what I did in 2020. And we are now at a crossroads, much like what we were in 2020. So much uncertainty, which I think is very fitting for not quitting at the finish line. And so I will share with you all a quick little video that I made of our family hike to really bring this message full circle and really help you understand why I say don't quit at the finish line. So let me just share this with you really quickly. And you'll see here. So I wanted to share that because that was essentially the process, the trail. And what was interesting about it is the fact that as I was going, I was just getting so tired because one, it was really cold. So it was freezing. It was 28 degrees on the Stony Man Trail. And down below, of course, it was around like 45, 50. So it was a significant difference in temperature. And when we think about the nation of America right now, there's a significant difference in temperature. So, what I will say is, Holy Spirit, give me the words to say to speak to your people today. So, whoever this message is for, I hope that it really blesses you because as I was walking up that mountain, when we started, I was like, okay, you know what? I got this. It's beautiful. It's a nice trail. We had an expectation of what we expected it to be because of what we saw where we were, not realizing that as we were going to embark on this journey, essentially, we would end up essentially walking through ice and leftover snow from the weeks before because of the fact that the sun couldn't reach those areas. So not only was the hike difficult, but then we started to walk in these areas where we did not anticipate snow and ice. And so I'll share with you, you can see on screen where we were walking, and this was literally the path, part of it. And so as we were walking that path, we were somewhat prepared, but not fully prepared for what we experienced in terms of the ice and snow. But once we got started, we didn't want to stop because we knew that the end goal, of course, was to get to the top where we could see the beautiful views. And when I tell you it was so worth it, this is what we saw when we finally made it to the top of that mountain. And so when I think about that, I think about life. I think about the fact that it is so easy to give up because it gets difficult. where we could turn around instead of keep walking, because it's like, okay, you know what? We didn't expect the ice. We didn't expect the leftover snow, but we knew that we wanted to reach the peak. We wanted to reach the summit because of the breathtaking views, as you can see here. Absolutely stunning. And another thing to highlight is when you get there, in addition to just seeing the mountain peaks, the other mountain peaks, you also see the valleys. And it makes me think a lot about life, where we think when we get to where we're going that it's going to be perfect, it's going to be pristine, that there won't be any other challenges that we'll face. And so I want to leave you with 3 important life lessons that I personally gained from this, which is 1, your perspective changes as you reach higher ground. So sometimes I think we struggle because we can't see the full picture yet. So we're walking there, we're trying to get there, but we can't see the full picture. And it's not until we push through that everything becomes clear. And so that actually brings me to Hebrews 10. And that's actually the foundation of this podcast. When I started podcasting, I honestly thought Confidence Restored was about how I felt about myself, how we look, and feeling confident in who you are as a person. But what I realized, that confidence is so much more. So for me, what I learned through trials and sometimes tribulation is that confidence was speaking to my faith. It was speaking to my trust in a higher power. And like I said, we're at a crossroads now in the world where literally we can have faith in people or we can have faith in God. And so I choose to have faith in God because I'm like, you know what? People will let you down, but God won't. God is the same every day. And so we can't blame God off the actions of man because we all have free will. And so when we look at what's happening, it's easy to want to like give up, throw in the towel. But again, our perspectives change when we see things from a higher vein. So when we're looking at it from a higher level, we realize that a lot of the things that we do battle against are spiritual. And so it brings me again to Hebrews 10. And it's really interesting. It's funny, I was going to start in 35, but I feel late to start in 29. So I'm just going to go with it. So Hebrews 10, starting in verse 29, it says, of how much sorer punishment suppose ye shall he be thought worthy, who hath trodden under foot the Son of God, and hath counted the blood of the covenant wherewith he was sanctified an unholy thing, and hath done despite unto the Spirit of grace. For we know him that hath said, vengeance belongeth unto me, I will recompense. Sorry, I scrolled a little too far. I will recompense, saith the Lord, and again the Lord shall judge his people. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God, but call to remembrance the former days in which, after ye illuminated, ye endured a great fight of afflictions, partly whilst ye were made a gazing stock both by reproaches and afflictions, and partly whilst ye became companions of them that were so used. For ye had compassion of me in my bonds, and took joyfully the spoiling of your goods, knowing in yourself that ye have in heaven a better and an enduring substance. Cast not away therefore your confidence, which hath great recompense of reward. For ye have need of patience, that after ye have done the will of God, ye might receive the promise. For yet a little while, and he that shall come will come and will not tarry. Now the just shall live by faith. But if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. But we are not of them who draw back unto perdition, aka hell, but of them that believe to the saving of the soul. And you know what? I don't think that's by mistake that I ended up reading that whole thing. That was not initially my plan, but now I see why God had me read it. When I think about Hebrews and I think about not throwing away your confidence, not throwing away your faith, with all of the things that we are seeing right now, it is easy for your faith to be shaken, mine included. And I think what God wants us to remember is that what we're seeing, a lot of this is partly due to the fact that we live in a fallen world, but then also that it's also part of the process, because we can't save ourselves. Only God can save us through his son, Jesus Christ, in terms of salvation. But the just shall live by faith. The just shall live by faith. Verse 38. And it says, do not throw away your confidence. Do not throw away your faith, especially in this hour, because now we are looking at what's happening from a spiritual level. When we reach higher ground, what we once lost can be found, because now we can see better, we can see clearer. And a lot of times, because we can't see the full picture, we struggle. And when I was walking up that mountain, I was struggling. I was winded. I was tired. And I was like, okay, you know what? Am I going to make it? Like, I don't know. I stopped a few times. Like, I had to post up on a tree. I was like, okay, this trail is wearing me out. And then added ice and snow on top of that I was not expecting. And I had on sneakers. I slipped 4 times, but I never fell. Come on, guy. That's a whole message. I slipped 4 times, but I never fell. And so literally, I think this is a reminder that we may go through the trials, we may go through the tribulations, we may go through things, but we may slip, but may we not fall. And so again, the first thing that I learned from this testimony is don't quit at the finish line. But the first thing is your perspective changes when you reach higher ground. Number 2 is the hardest part often comes right before the breakthrough. So just like the final stretch of the hike, remember I showed you all, I said it was tough. It was ice, it was snow. And I was like, okay, push through, push through, push through. I just had to keep telling myself, push through. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see what it looks like. We had to push through because it was not easy. It was not an easy hike, but there was a breakthrough. And when I say there was a breakthrough, what was interesting is as I was walking on that particular part of the trail, I remember looking up and I could see the sun peeking through the clouds. And I thought to myself, okay, I can make it. I'm almost there. So the final stretch was hard, but it's like life. The greatest blessings oftentimes come after seasons of struggle. They come after the trial. They come after the temptation. They come after the difficulty. But listen, the breakthrough, when it comes through, it is worth it. Like these views were stunning because we made it. We kept going. We made it to the top where we could see these beautiful peaks. And we also saw the valleys. It's not that they were left behind. You could still see them, but we made it to the peak. We made it to the summit. And for someone out there, you feel like you made it to a summit, but you're wondering why you're still going through. And that's because sometimes we have to go through it to get through it. And I remember we had a former guest on, Jay Wilson, who said that. She said her grandmother used to always tell her, you have to go through to get through. And it's so true. Literally, we had to go through the ice. We had to go through the snow. We had to keep on climbing. We had to go through the trees to get to the mountain peak. And it was absolutely stunning when we got there, which brings me to Galatians 6. And this one, I'm going to start in verse 5. And it starts, for every man shall bear his own burden. Let him that is taught in the word communicate unto him that teacheth in all good things. Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. And let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. And how I started this off was talking about how I was winded on the hike because I was tired. And I was like, all right, I'm going to push through. I'm going to push through. I'm going to make it. But even the word reminds us in Galatians 6, and let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. Now, thank God I did not faint, because it would have been a struggle for them to pick me up and carry me down the mountain or go get help. And it was cold. Like I said, it was 28 degrees. It was cold. It was cold. The hike was hard. And it said it was the easiest trail. That was the kicker. On the maps, when you look at the trails, it was like, oh, this is the easiest trail. And I'm like, this was easy. I was struggling, but I was struggling because I was out of shape. Come on, that's a whole other word right there. I was out of shape, which takes me back to Galatians 6, verse 8. All right. And I rhyme from time to time. So verse 8 says, "For he that soweth to the flesh shall reap of the flesh corruption, but he that soweth to the spirit shall of the spirit reap life everlasting." We got to put in some more reps in the spirit realm. We have to build up our faith. We have to build up our spirit man so that we can endure until the end, so that we can endure this fight, so we don't get weary when trials come, when tribulations come, because they're going to come. Because again, the hardest part comes before the breakthrough. And the last point I want to make about this testimony and this lesson learned from hiking this mountain is that the journey is just as important as the destination. Every single step we take builds endurance, it builds character, it builds faith. And that's why I said, don't quit, even when the finish line feels far away, because literally the enemy would have it another way. The enemy would be like, you know what? What's the point? Throw in the towel, give up, give it up, give it up. You ain't gonna make it. Stop. But God is like, do you trust me? Are you going to keep on trying to go? Are you going to hold on to your salvation? Or are you going to be like, bump it? I done already messed up. Let me just quit. Let me throw in the towel. And that's what I thought about as I was climbing that mountain. I was like, don't quit at the finish line. You're almost there. You can see the breakthrough. You can see the sun. You can see the mountain peak. Just push through. Just push through. And I literally kept talking to myself just like this. I'm not even joking. I literally was like, okay, push through, pause, but push through. I didn't stop. There were times where I paused. I posted up on a tree or wherever I was. I stopped to catch my breath because I wasn't feeling that great either. So I felt like I had some sinus issues going on, which I may sound a little nasally now. But between that, my heart racing, feeling like, okay, I'm out of shape. I'm trying to climb this mountain with this 340 feet elevation gain, and I'm trucking along to the point at one point my daughter said, "Mommy, let me help you." Well, one, she said, "Why are you breathing like that?" Because I was like, Mommy's out of shape, and I have not climbed or hiked in a long time. So that was one. But then two, she was like, "Well, we're not going to leave you." So she kept turning around to make sure I was okay. She was like, "You're moving slow." And I'm like, I am moving slow, but I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep going because I can see that we're almost there. And it reminds me of James 1:12, which says, "Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that love him." And when I think about salvation, there's a whole lot of things that will test our salvation. There's a whole lot of stuff that happens in life that will make us want to be like, you know what, is it worth it? Is it worth it? But God is like, yeah, it's worth it. Because when I back it up to James 1, verse 2, it says, "My brethren, count it all joy when ye fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. For let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Let the brother of low degree rejoice in that he is exalted, but the rich in that he is made low, because as the flower of the grass he shall pass away. For the sun is no sooner risen with a burning heat, but it withereth the grass, and the flower thereof falleth, and the grace of the fashion of it perisheth. So also shall the rich man fade away in his ways. Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that love him. Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Then when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. Do not err, my beloved brethren. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, and cometh down from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. Of his own will begat he us with the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. Wherefore, lay apart all filthiness and superfluity of naughtiness, and receive with meekness the engrafted word, which is able to save your souls. But be ye doers of the word, not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. For if any be a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like unto a man beholding his natural face in a glass. For he beholdeth himself and goeth his way, and straightway forgetteth what manner of man he was. But whoso looketh into the perfect law of liberty and continueth therein, he being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man shall be blessed in his deed. If any man among you seem to be religious, and bridleth not his tongue, but deceiveth his own heart, this man's religion is vain. Pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this: to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. And when I think about the book of James, I actually ended up listening to the entire book today a couple of times. I let it play on the Bible app, and I really appreciated listening, because I was like, okay, you know what? It's been a while since I've read the book of James, but hearing it and listening, and I was like, this book is a blessing for such a time as this. So I do encourage you to go back and read it for yourself. And that's something that I've learned, and now I understand it more, why they say read the word for yourself, so that we will know the word, so that we, when the things are coming, because they're coming, and we're seeing it fast and furious, like every day the news is a different story, something's happening. But it said when we ask God, ask him in faith with nothing wavering. So that means when we ask in faith, we have to believe that he will come through for us today. And I mean, he did. We're here, we're alive, we're breathing. And I think about some of the things that I felt led to do, and I'm glad that I did. Like God, I felt like told me, ironically, the beginning of last year, I found my draft, and it was from February 2024. And the book Faith, Pray, Obey is what came to mind. 40 Keys to Unlocking Spiritual Freedom. And in that, I share many testimonies, but I'm sharing testimonies of faith, inspiration, and transformation, because I was led to read the book of Exodus. And I thought about the fact that the Israelites wandered around for 40 years for an 11-day trip. And a lot of us have been wandering around in the wilderness because we feel like we have to. We're trying to be religious. We're trying to gain salvation. And God is like, I'm not like people. Because they treated you that way, you feel like I'm going to treat you that way. Because you thought you had to perform for them, you feel like you have to perform for me. And God is like, all you need is grace and mercy. And somebody will catch that. Because you thought you had to perform for them, now you think you have to perform for me, when all you need is grace and mercy. And that comes through believing that Jesus Christ is Lord, that he died for our sins. And if we believe in him, we can surely live again. And so when I think about my life, when I think about my testimony, when I think about the glory in my story, all I can do is give God praise, because I'm like, you know what? God has seen me through some things. And if he saw me through those then, he will see me through what we're seeing now. And like I said, I released this podcast the beginning of 2020, March, following a month-long miscarriage, where I did not know if I was going to make it, but God. Okay. It wasn't the doctors. It was God that literally kept me in the midst of my storm. It was God that allowed me to be here today, to live and survive the things I've survived. And the more revelation I get, the more I see God was with me the whole time. So we may feel exhausted before we reach our goal, but God. And again, I'll recap really quickly for you the 3 main points of what I learned from my mountain hike. The main one being don't quit at the finish line. But how we don't quit at the finish line is that we remember that our perspective changes when we reach higher ground. Number 2 is the hardest part often comes right before the breakthrough. So you got to push through. And the third one is the journey is just as important as the destination. So when we get to the end of our lives, we want God to say, well done, my good and faithful servant. We don't want to throw in the towel at the finish line because the devil was distracting us. And I heard Prophetess Tiffany Montgomery say, the devil, when he can't destroy you, he will distract you. And I had a lot of distractions that was trying to keep me from recording this today. But I was like, no, I am going to record this message. This is Testimony Tuesday. And I said every other week, I'm going to bring a message, sometimes maybe sooner. And it depends. If the Holy Spirit leads me not to record, I won't. But there was something I had to get right before I recorded tonight. Come on, God. God is so good. There was something I had to get right before I recorded tonight. So remember, keep going, keep climbing, and don't quit at the finish line. And in the words of my late great grandmother, keep on keeping on. Be blessed.